So I know we just met and all, but I want to have a little talk, just you and I, mano y mano here, about that little voice that's sitting on your shoulder telling you that you're missing a big piece to your sales success. Yes, that's right. It's called a sales enablement strategy. And in this video, I'm going to show you some strategies, best practices, and frameworks for B2B to get your sales juices flowing and thinking about new ways to build more pipeline and close more sales. And whether you're a sales rep, a manager, a director, VP, a business owner, it doesn't really matter. If you're looking for the best sales enablement strategy, then this video is going to be a great resource for anyone who's thinking about taking their sales strategies to the next level. If you don't know me yet, my name is Patrick Spielman. I'm the founder at Upticks, which is the best sales automation and enablement software to dominate your sales process. Now, let's dive right in and explore how to get real results with better sales enablement strategies. All right, I'm going to get comfortable here in my little chair while we're having our little talk about sales enablement strategies, frameworks, and best practices for B2B. And just so you're aware, this is a Notion doc. There's a link in the description. If you want to take this and copy it and save it for a rainy day and help you implement it, you can absolutely do it. And since I know that most of you are new, you haven't subscribed to the channel, I just want to give you a quick little look of what other people say about some of our content. So one of our most recent videos we launched, someone had just randomly commented 6 months into my sales career and have only followed what you have said, hitting 10% reply rates, and some of my friends are dumbfounded that on how I'm doing it, only up from here. So this was a sales rep apparently that was obviously pretty happy with the content, and this content's free. So I hope you get a lot of results from it, and I hope it really helps you. So let's get started here. Let me just give you a quick look under the hood, what we're going to cover. First of all, we're just going to go briefly over what is sales enablement, of course. I'm going to get into some best practices. So I got a lot of information here I want to share with you guys. We've got the sales enablement framework. So I'm going to go over strategy. I'm going to go over outbound versus inbound. I'm going to go over lead scoring. I'm going to go over a waterfall method that will help you with your overall strategy. And then we're just going to talk real briefly about sales enablement software. I'm going to save that for another video. All right, since you're searching sales enablement, you might be wondering what sales enablement is. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but let's just quickly define what sales enablement is. So first of all, sales enablement are the strategies, technologies, and the process that help sales teams sell more effectively, okay? Ultimately, the goal with sales enablement, of course, like you've got goals, you've got quotas, either for yourself or for you're trying to implement into your company, all right? The goal is to implement tools and resources so that you can get prospects the right content at the right time, right? Ultimately, to close more deals. That's what we're trying to do. And we're trying to do it as efficiently as humanly possible. So, there's going to be things, collateral, demos, case studies, training programs, all that kind of stuff. So that's sales enablement and what it is. And mostly it comprises really these three things. And ultimately, we're trying to get more sales, right? Awesome. Let's get into some best practices. In order to implement sales enablement successfully, the very first thing that you need to do is define clear goals and objectives. I know you're probably thinking this is the boring stuff. I just want to get to closing deals, right? Well, we can't close deals without having clear goals and objectives before we implement any of that kind of stuff. All right. So some goals and objectives to help you kind of, map some of this stuff out. Maybe you have some of these things already, right? But maybe I'll get you thinking about a few things. So I'll go over it. First of all, goals, you might have a number of leads that you want to hit, right? Number of leads. And how many of those leads do you want to ultimately turn into conversations? Okay. How many conversations do you want to have? Is daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, right? Map that stuff out. Okay. How many of those conversations do you want to lead to a meeting or a demo? Okay. How many meetings or demos do we want to lead to customers? How many customers do we need to hit our revenue targets, right? Okay. So set goals and objectives, right, that are realistic and achievable for your team before you even start anything. Next are a few different examples. All right. Now, here's if you're doing an outbound strategy, right? Here's an idea of what you could maybe do for KPIs. And these numbers aren't 100% rock solid, but if you're doing outbound, and we'll talk about outbound in a little bit, you might want to have some goals around LinkedIn connections, messages, how many cold calls, how many emails you need to collect and enroll into sequences, how many videos you want your reps to send once they're actually warmed up and ready to actually start doing outreach to, right? How many sales meetings, how many new clients, so on and so forth. Okay, map some of this stuff out, map out your conversion metrics. Next is to understand your audience. Okay, I'm going to have some more information on this coming up. But really, to be effective with your sales enablement strategy, you have to understand who the hell you're selling to, right? And hopefully you do by now. You're researching sales enablement. You've probably been at this a little while. Okay, this isn't your first rodeo. Okay, But to get a better understanding, some things to think about, and hopefully you've done this, like most companies we've seen have really dialed this in from a firmographic perspective: company size, job titles, revenue, location, that kind of thing. But what I often see people don't do is really get into understanding problems prospects have, desires, what are their frustrations. I even missed one: implications of problems and frustrations, right? Map all that stuff out. And you know what's really cool is there's this new tool called Chat GPT. It's awesome. You can go do a ton of research if you're not really as familiar with the problems, desires, frustrations that your prospects are having, to go research it. Or you can just pick up the phone, talk to some of your best customers and ask them. A lot of times I see people that they haven't even asked their customers what problems they're having. Now, if you've got a developed product or a service, you're probably fairly familiar with this. But if you're newer and you're trying to implement a sales enablement strategy, you need to find this stuff out before you can really even do anything, okay? Next, we want to use data and analytics, right? So without data, we're flying blind. So anywhere, any step of the way that we can use data and analytics to help us get better, the better. And a lot of times these are really good, of course, data points to help us. Now you might have some data, some analytics, some things with your marketing that you want to hit, but from a sales, a prospecting, and outreach perspective, and all that kind of stuff, these are pretty good metrics to hit. If you have a marketing team, now this might be fairly obvious. Collaborating between sales and marketing back and forth, instead of cat and dog conversations, let's work together to have marketing get some feedback from sales to improve marketing, and vice versa, back and forth. This is a give and take. I often see, these things are totally separated, and it doesn't really help the organization if we're not collaborating on all fronts. And then, of course, always have your measurement and your optimization efforts, at any point in time: dashboards, reports, all that kind of stuff, so that you have consistent feedback to make actionable decisions, and of course review that with marketing, with sales, so on and so forth. Now let's get into some frameworks. Okay, first I want to get into strategy. So kind of defining and mapping out the best strategy that's going to be the most efficient and actually help you and be more effective. All right, some examples of sales enablement strategy. Of course, if you haven't implemented this, you got to get your reps the right materials in order to do their job effectively. And I often see this as an undervalued thing in most organizations. You have to have a good training program. Okay, a training program you don't need to hire 15 people for it, but you got to have a good infrastructure to make sure that your reps have the knowledge in order to actually sell effectively. Then we get into processes and systems and software and all this nerdy fun stuff, right? But we need to make sure that those other two things are in place first before we implement that and help sales reps track their activity, which of course then leads us into having tools, technology, and access to information more easily. Okay. And from there, of course, we can develop more content, more email copy, more call scripts, right? PDFs, workbooks, things that sales reps can share with people at different steps of the journey. Ultimately, we need to arm the reps with all the tools and all the resources and all the technology to be successful before we do any of this stuff. Okay. So that's what's going to help our strategy be most effective and efficient. Up, did you hear that noise? That's the dinner bell. I gotta go for just a second, have dinner. I'll come right back. Hey, if you're loving the content and getting value, I'd love if you'd like the video, comment below with any questions, and if you're new to the channel, smash that subscribe button to get the best sales content on the internet. Now back to the training. All right, so now that I'm back from my basic needs of eating, let's get back to our little talk here. So let's get into outbound versus inbound as it relates to sales enablement, because of course there's a difference between inbound leads and there's a difference between outbound leads, right? Biggest thing to be cognizant of course, with your outbound leads is your messaging. Okay, so there's going to be a difference between your messaging and inbound, where we can do some things with intent. We'll get into that. On outbound, it's going to be pretty much all persona based. But some things I want to point out to be cognizant of with your messaging is tailoring your messaging to specific personas within that. Okay, the biggest thing in order to communicate effectively with prospects and get the highest conversion rates are going to be to do persona based outbound. Okay, the more specific you can get, the better. It's going to increase your conversions. So, as an example, let's just say your sales team selling CRM or sales enablement software, right? It'd be really, really useful and helpful if you're pulling your lead list, when you're pulling your lead list, to break your lead list into differences between business owners, marketing versus C-level executives, VPs, directors, even by different company size ranges, often like 1 to 10, 11 to 50, so on and so forth. The more you can break things down, the better. The reason is, as we talked about a little bit ago, understanding problems, implications, desires. Oftentimes with different personas, people have different problems that they're having that you can solve. And so if your messaging with your outbound is persona based, that's going to help you maximize overall your conversions. Okay. Now with your inbound, of course, there's a difference now. If you've got inbound leads coming from marketing, you can start doing interest based messaging versus the persona based messaging. And interest based messaging is always better than persona based. Now, this is why we're like, even with outbound, with lead lists and databases, people are starting to add intent data, right? That's interest based type marketing. So, but with your own inbound efforts, of course, you want to make sure that you're tailoring your message specific to their interests. Okay, so marketing's probably handling this. However, when marketing hands leads off to sales, you can still keep the momentum going with interest-based targeting with your sales sequences. Okay, so you should be sharing data, of course, between any marketing systems, any sales systems, and your sales reps should know what interests that these people are having. And then if you've got a really good sales enablement tool, hint upticks, then you can segment your lists automatically from marketing and then put those leads into campaigns that are interest based. So if we're starting our outreach mechanisms, now we can tailor our message to what the prospect's interests are. Let's talk about lead scoring. I'm not going to go through the sea of words here. You can read it again. You can make a copy of this document if you want. But lead scoring is or triggers within a sales enablement tool, for instance. And if you have a really good software, of course, it can do this for you automatically. It can lead score your leads, no matter if they're inbound leads or outbound leads. You can lead score on the basis of activity or even some of that firmographic type data, job titles, company sizes. But I like getting into how many emails are they opening, how many links are they clicking, all this different activity data that you can have so that you can tell your sales reps when to actually start reaching out to people. Okay. I'm not going to go into the details of the scoring mechanisms. If you want to read through this, you can by all means do it. The next thing I want to get into is a waterfall outreach methodology. I really like a waterfall outreach methodology. And what it is it's a linear step-by-step approach that follows a predetermined sequence of activities. But within that, and I'm going to show you this little graphic here as an example, I like focusing sales reps' time on one channel at a time. I often see a lot of people, they're hitting LinkedIn, they're hitting the phone, they're hitting emails, and they're condensing it all within a small period of time, and nothing is more frustrating than getting blitzkrieged by somebody who's trying to sell you something. And immediately, what I want to do is totally shut it off. So, what I like is this waterfall method where you go and take it from channel to channel. So, you do your outreach all in email, let your processes run, okay? Unlock that data. Then, depending on what the data tells you, maybe you then pick up the phone, okay? And then if you don't get any action, then when you pick up the phone, then maybe you dump them into a social campaign, right? But it's a waterfall. You focus one channel at a time. And I really like that. Totally up to you, though. Here's the methodology that we like to use as it relates to at least our outbound. Okay, with inbound, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, you can put a little bit more manual work into it. But with outbound specifically, we like to lead with email. We like to do a 5 email sequence, let it run, unlock the data. And depending on what happens, if they're opening, but they're not replying, we call them. If they're not opening, we dump them into like a LinkedIn campaign. Then we'd let that run. And then that would come back over into the calling sequence. Okay. And then so on and so forth. And then we've got ongoing lead nurturing and whatnot. But the main point here is that we focus on one channel at a time. All right. And so I talked about these different channels, of course, just to go over these real quick. I like email. It's great for scaling and it's low cost, particularly with outbound. And you can gather data from it and use it for your manual campaigns for phone and social, of course. Then with calling, I think it's great to lead with calling with inbound leads first when you can. Of course, if marketing's nurturing them and all that kind of stuff with email anyway, that's fine. You got that going on. But once they're a marketing qualified lead, then I'd like to hit them on the phone as soon as humanly possible. And then for the phone, I like retargeting with outbound. using the phone after they're warmed up on email or after they're warmed up a little bit on social media if we're not getting immediate direct response. And then social for me, I like it more for follow up and nurturing, not necessarily leading. It's particularly like LinkedIn, there's too many limits and stuff like that, where it's hard to do any sort of like concerted effort. You can certainly do a concerted effort, of course, on there, but I like it more for follow up and nurturing. And lastly, let's just talk real briefly about sales enablement software. I'm going to have another entire video on sales enablement software, so I'm not going to go into it a whole lot. The biggest thing to understand, of course, as you know, you're probably looking into this as well. Software plays a critical role in the success of a team, but I see people not building out their software enough for their sales team and letting their sales team do whatever, and it ends up becoming a paperweight. Okay, but the biggest thing once you implement sales, there's a few different things that your sales software and your enablement software should do. Obviously, you should be able to do outreach, cold outreach, and it should have the nerdiest features as humanly possible for all your cold outreach. Don't shortchange this. Too many sales enablement softwares, not to talk trash about competitors or anything like that, they're not updating and changing with the times because they're big enterprise companies. They can't move that fast. So you really want a tool that is modernizing and they're changing with the times with the outreach. Obviously, you want automation. Okay. If your reps are manually enrolling people into campaigns, you got to stop that. You got to pick up an automation tool that can do this stuff for you automatically and implement some marketing automation fundamentals and principles into your sales enablement software. And it should do all of your lead nurturing and follow-ups on autopilot, whether the system's doing it fully automated for you or it's scheduling your tasks, your phone calls, your to-dos, everything for your sales rep. It should do it for you in its entirety. And of course, it should be able to manage your pipeline. Again, we're going to get into this a little bit later. So this video was part one of a video series for sales enablement. So if you're watching this when I immediately release it, you're going to have to hang tight a little bit. I'm going to be launching part two, which is going to be all about diving into sales enablement software. So keep an eye out for that. And if you're interested in learning about who in the heck is Upticks and all this kind of stuff, we'd certainly appreciate it. Check out the resource section. You can, learn a little bit about Upticks. If you want to, check out our website. If you want to sign up for a 14-day trial, you can do that. If you want to look at all of our features, you can do that. We've launched a cold to gold email challenge that we're doing. Feel free to learn about that. That this webinar that this link leads to is going to drop a value bomb on you. So go ahead and check that out. And if you want to connect with us on any of the channels, by all means, feel free to connect with us. That's everything I have for you today. Now, if you want to level up your sales and fill up your calendar, then sign up for a trial of Upticks and then book a call with us, and we'll help you implement all of these crazy strategies and have you winning customers in no time. Until next time, we'll see you on the next training video.